There are not a lot of doctors that are recognizing this, especially in the dermatology community, because if they were to recognize it, then it would be their fault because they're the ones that are continually telling you that they're safe. They're continually prescribing them. They're using them way beyond what the package or insert says. They believe that they're safe. They weren't trained.
Welcome back to the Health Longevity Secrets Show, where we push the limits of human potential and unlock the secrets to our health and longevity with your host, Dr. Robert Lovkin.
What if the cream you trust most was fueling a global health crisis? This episode reveals how a so-called miracle cream found in nearly every medicine cabinet sparked a hidden global epidemic. You'll hear the shocking truth about topical steroids, the battle for awareness, and how one woman turned her health crisis into a movement that may save millions.
And now, please enjoy this week's episode.
Hey, Kelly, welcome to the program.
Hey, Rob, thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I'm so excited about today's conversation. A little background, you are a world swim champion and also a skin champion, sort of an elite masters athlete, currently still with world records under your belt, and the co-founder of ITSAN. We're going to find out what that actually means. It's a nonprofit leading the fight against the global epidemic of topical steroid addiction and withdrawal. But most importantly, you've written a blockbuster book that just dropped. It's out now that we're going to talk about also, called False Cure: How a Miracle Cream Fueled a Denied Epidemic and the Movement That Fought Back. I can't wait. So maybe start with a little bit about your origin story and maybe even the exact moment you realized that the miracle cream you'd been given had been turned into a hidden epidemic inside your own body.
Yes. Well, I am really grateful to tell this story because I want it to help people. And I kind of joke that anyone who has skin should listen up because it's not just it doesn't just affect a certain population. It affects everyone from babies to the elderly and every color of skin around the world. And the way that I fell into this trap was simply that, you alluded that I'm a swimmer. So I started swimming at a young age. And, we swimmers, we get a little itchy, chlorine-dry skin. Very innocently, you can grab that tube of hydrocortisone cream, which is, in most people's medicine cabinets, and use that, which most people don't realize that a hydrocortisone type cream is a steroid. And even you can take it a step further. What is a steroid? And then a steroid is something when you put it on your skin that it changes your whole, it's a hormone. So it changes. And I'm explaining this to you, all of this, but this is for the layperson out there, someone, a parent who sees a little itchy rash on their child and decides they're going to use this cream. So I started using this as a little swimmer. I was about 12 and I would use it hit or miss during my life for a little bit of, eczema around my eyes from my goggles, or maybe a little bit on my hands. And what we are learning today and finding out that it's a total steroid load over one's lifetime. So it's kind of like when you hit that proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back, that's when your body will lapse into something called topical steroid addiction. It's often created by a topical steroid, which again is a cream. It's a miracle cream. It's hydrocortisone. It's prescribed by dermatologists, GPs, nurse practitioners, pediatricians are have been using this for rashes. So anyone with a rash, and it can start out as a genetic rash, which is just eczema, or it can start out as a rash that is just a contact dermatitis, like you're allergic to your earrings or your wedding ring or your watch, whatever. And you can develop contact dermatitis where you fall into this trap. So At about 40, I had used, evidently, I hit my steroid load where we're talking about topical steroids, and we talked about the International Topical Steroid Addiction Network. I'm sorry, Topical Steroid Awareness Network, where that spells ITSAN. And that's the organization that brings light to this condition. But I started that 12 years ago with the dermatologist who has been blowing the whistle on this condition for decades. He started this at UCLA in a clinic where he was seeing this reaction to topical steroids in the 1980s. So it's a long time coming. And that's when I was 40, I started to hit the skids with the rashes were spreading. My skin was getting red. It was oozing everywhere. It did not resemble regular eczema, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse until my chapter opens, which is called Down the Rabbit Hole, chapter 2 in the book, and it talks about how I went to 5 dermatologists in a row, and none of them could diagnose me with topical steroid addiction and withdrawal, because you're trying to go off of the steroids. But, one diagnosed me with a deep infection. So I had a lot of antibiotics. One diagnosed me with scabies, which I did not have. And I had to be coated in, permethrin, which is an anti-parasite. And another one just gave me soak and smears, which is where you put this all over you soak in a hot tub. So when your pores are open, then there's a 1-pound jar of triamcinolone, which is a mid-strength, steroid. And then, my husband put it all over me, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse till I finally found Dr. Marvin J. Rappaport, who is the person that kind of figured this out. And I emailed him, and he said he was in California and I was in Florida. And he said, stop all corticosteroids. And during that time that I was seeing these dermatologists, I was getting shots too, not just creams. I was getting creams, I was getting pills, I was getting shots. And he said, stop all of that. And then that's when all hell broke loose, because my body, which had been kind of in this upward trajectory of just more and more and more steroids, I went into a small adrenal crisis because my body had been used to getting these corticosteroids, and my blood pressure was severely low. They wanted to hospitalize me, and I had to do a little bit more steroids, and then there's no tapering in this, but then for almost 2 years, Rob, I really could not wear clothes. It was just a full body molting of my skin. I mean, now I have, creamy white skin. It goes away, but it takes years for some people. We don't know exactly how long it takes. Some people, it takes 5 years, 10 years. Some people, if they have a smaller amount that affected them, but I couldn't wear clothes for a couple of years. It would be too painful. I was housebound for a couple of years. And it was on my face. It was on my neck. It was all, all over my hands, every square inch of my body, basically. So that was addiction. And then you slowly start healing. That's the withdrawal, but it's happening to infants, to babies, to, the elderly, to people that can't afford to be off work. Fortunately, my husband was supporting us through that time that I was not able to work, able to leave the house. So it's a real crisis, and it's millions of people, because eczema is one of the top conditions. I mean, I think there are 8 billion people in the world that have, 8 billion people in the world. And then of that percentage that have eczema, they use topical steroids because it's the golden standard. It's the number one treatment for topical steroids. For eczema. And then a large percentage of that. So about 12% of the people, this is a conservative number, that use topical steroids will succumb to topical steroid addiction. So it's about 4 million people in the US and about 60 to 70 million around the globe. And and the real tough part about it is it's just not being acknowledged by the medical community.
And so it sounds like from your personal journey, one take-home message for our audience, certainly if you're using topical steroids and you may have this condition, don't stop them without talking to a knowledgeable healthcare provider so they can deal with the potential side effects of stopping them, right? Even stopping them, you went through a whole list of issues, right?
Yes, for sure. And the beautiful advice in that, but also the flip side of that is it is very hard to find, even today, even 50 years after Dr. Rappaport has been, beating the drum about this, to find a provider that actually will say, you have topical steroid withdrawal, and I'm going to walk you through this. And usually it's just comfort medications that you need. So there are not a lot of doctors that are recognizing this, especially in the dermatology community, because if they were to recognize it, then it would be their fault, because they're the ones that are continually telling you that they're safe. They're continually prescribing them. They're using them way beyond what the package or insert says. They believe that they're safe. They weren't trained on these. There was no training for topical steroid addiction and withdrawal. So it's hard for people who want to go off steroids to find a practitioner who's going to support them.
So let's back up a little bit for our audience, maybe for our listeners who've never heard of topical steroid withdrawal. What's a steroid? You touched on a little bit, but what's actually happening under the skin, biochemically, hormonally? How does it work?
Okay, so that's a great question. And what happens is first, I do this all the time. So my husband and I run 5 or 10K road races, and I'll be running along next to somebody, and just because this is kind of my, my soapbox, I'll say, "Hi, do you mind if I ask you, do you know what hydrocortisone is?" And they'll say, I don't know. I think it's some cream you buy in the drugstore. And I say, "Okay, so do you know that it's a steroid?" "No, I didn't know it was a steroid." "So if you did know that it was a steroid, do you know what a steroid does?" "No, I don't even know what a steroid does." And then I'll ask someone randomly, "Do you know what a topical steroid is?" And they'll say, "Is that something that like bodybuilders use? Does it maybe strengthen your skin?" And so what happens with topical steroids is the way that they were brought to market is something called the blanching test. And so they put a little small dab of a topical steroid cream on the participants in the study's forearm. And if it blanched the size of, say, a dime, that was a low potency steroid, because it just closed the blood vessels in that part of the skin down just that much. But then when they used higher potency, it might show that it blanched and closed down a red, this is an inflamed part, that it closed down maybe a quarter size or maybe a $50 size. And then the super high potency would blanch all the way up and down the arm. So topical steroid addiction has gotten stronger because the pharmaceutical companies have ramped up the potencies. So, if X is good, then XXX must be better. And now there's XXXX. So it's the blanching test, because you have to wonder why. And people use this in India for skin lightening. They use it for just making your face look better. You don't even need to have a rash. Some products hide it, maybe overseas products that come in to just make your skin look creamy and white. Because if we all, we might have flushed skin, or we might have ruddy skin or red skin. And if you put topical steroids on your skin, it will close down the blood vessels, and it will make your skin look beautiful and creamy for that short period of time. And then what happens, Rob, is they have tachyphylaxis, which you know what that is. I love that word from working for Pfizer for 12 years in the drug world. It means that they stop working. So in order, and then the blood vessels will open up. And so you need a stronger steroid. So what happens, people get that initial effect of the anti-inflammatory effect. Then it wears off. They keep using it because they love the reaction, the response. Then they use a higher potency, and then that wears off. Then they use a higher potency, and that wears off. And then it's a shot, and then that wears off. So it gets so big that eventually, so what happens, this is what they, again, more research is needed, but eventually you can't find enough steroids because you're going to get Cushing syndrome, or your body is going to stop producing its own, natural hormone of cortisol, which is what these are based on, corticosteroids. And then you just become this big, your pores are so wide open all over your body that you have something called serous exudate, and that will be oozing coming from these open pores that now cannot control themselves. And people wake up stuck to their sheets, stuck to their pillowcases. I mean, it is not a pretty nor a nice smelling. It sets you up for infections. It's just a living hell. And that is how the actual function of the steroid on your skin starts, with that blanching test, shutting the steroids down. Then they stop working. Then your blood vessels are wide open, which is why Dr. Rappaport initially brought this to market as the condition called red skin syndrome, which your skin is red. It's really, really red. And a lot of times that is how people initially figure it out. They're like, wow, I just, am I allergic to the sun? Am I allergic to my computer screen? Because your skin is so red. And that's how I Googled red skin. And I found Dr. Rappaport's article, Red Skin Syndrome to Eyelid Dermatitis to Red Skin Syndrome to Cure, was the name of his article that I found 15 years ago. And that's when I reached out to him. And this is how it all started.
Yeah, I remember in medical school learning about steroids, corticosteroids, which these are, and how powerful they are, and certainly oral one, a pill or an injection of these, affect your whole body, is so powerful. But we sort of were taught that, well, topical ones you don't have to worry as much because it's a smaller dose and all. But evidently, that's obviously not true. And just to be clear, you're not saying never use topical steroids, but it's rather the situation where you use them persistently and develop this condition, correct?
Yeah, well, I'm definitely not saying never use them, but 2 weeks is what the actual package insert says, which no one actually adheres to. So yes, if you have a raging case of poison ivy or a really bad contact dermatitis, but it's not going to cure eczema, because eczema is kind of a long-term genetic mutation. So why use them there? I mean, unless you're in a really, really bad flare, very short amount of time. And then if you have contact dermatitis, it's probably going to go away because it's something that you were touching. Maybe use it for a short amount of time. So definitely saying there is a place for them, but we really have to be judicious about using them. And there's I follow on Instagram, I follow a mom who's got her hashtag is or her handle is TSW toddler, and her daughter, she used on her daughter's skin when she was little in a onesie 1 week on the face. And so you even have to think about the baby's body ratio. So you've got a little tiny human who, when you put like something that you would put on your face or I would put on my face, it's just affecting them more. And your face is a lot more absorbent or more thin skin. So it affects the skin more. So these babies are having terrible reactions within a week. So there has to be a real good place for them.
Yeah. It's that's such an important point. You mentioned eczema too, the genetic component to it. It's interesting. Some people now we're hearing about people changing their lifestyle and even their diet and affecting eczema too. So there are many things we're learning about this all the time. Well, you called your book False Cure. Why do you think this miracle drug story with topical steroids has persisted for decades, even as patients start getting sicker?
Yeah, I think because, one of the theories that we run by is, none of us are okay with having a little, rash on our skin or a little, like we need to just give ourselves a little bit of a break, and say, all right, I'm going to go to work today with a zit, or I'm going to go to work today with, this a little bit of rash around my eyes when it would have gone away on its own. So I think we're always looking, in this society for some kind of a miracle cream, some kind of a miracle pill, something that's going to smooth us out. And I think that's what the topical steroid industry has perpetuated this. And it's pharmaceuticals companies. And, I worked for Pfizer for 12 years, and it's, they are out there promoting this, and it's a multi-billion-dollar annual market. So, there is definitely a need for it. There's definitely a market for it. Maybe I'm not sure I should say need, but there's definitely a market for this, and it's being promoted by pharmaceutical companies. So, they come out with new formulations, new foams, new creams, new ointments, new pills, new everything. And it's all about this treating the symptom and not the root cause. I'm a full believer that eczema has some genetic components. I mean, people that are atopic, I'm a, Irish heritage with light skin and sensitive skin, but I can certainly have much more control over my skin being sensitive when I eat more healthy and my stress is lower. And, there are just things that will treat the root cause. And I think people are looking for that fast fix, which is a false cure, when the hard cure is the real cure is let's get more sleep. Let's drink more water. Let's reduce our stress. Let's do some exercise. Let's put down the sugar. Let's put down the processed food. Those are the things that we could be doing to be healthier instead of reaching for these false cures. And, I was thinking, my adult master's podcast about adult athletes, I thought, maybe I should start a podcast called False Cure, because we could talk to many industries, Rob, that have false cures. There's all kinds of false cures going on out there, but this was the one that was, personal to me.
Yeah. I mean, you went from literally fighting for your own life to co-founding your organization, ITSAN. So what flipped the switch for you from being a survivor to becoming a global activist?
Yeah, it's just once I realized, because people are lost in this hole of looking for what's wrong with them, and they're going to doctor after doctor after doctor, and they don't have eczema anymore. They don't have some kind of a weird rash. They have topical steroid addiction, and it is a prison. I know tons of families, hundreds of families who've looked for that thing that's causing their skin to go out of control. Is it the carpet? They move, they rip their drywall out. Is there mold behind the walls? They are looking and looking, just like I was. And when I found that answer and I became cured, like, oh my gosh, I've been in this hell searching for, following the steroid hole, going down the steroid rabbit hole for about 3 or 4 years before I found Dr. Rappaport. And then once I found that was the cure and I started seeing my cure, I just said, I've got to get this out there to the world, because so if I'm suffering from this, so many people around the world are. And it would just, I think there are just people out there that do that, that you just say, if this is happening to me, it's got to be happening to someone else. And that was kind of hashtags and pre-internet, and there wasn't one video, there wasn't one hashtag, there wasn't anything about topical steroid addiction and withdrawal in we started that in '09. So actually we didn't start a nonprofit, Dr. Rappaport and I together. And I was just the sharer. As I say, there's the doctor who dares, there's the patient who shares, and there's the organization that cares. And that's ITSAN. And so I just shared his work, his paper. He's the doctor. He's the UCLA dermatologist, MD of medicine and dermatology from UCLA. This guy has all the credentials. He has been talking about this forever, and he's like the Semmelweis of Semmelweis, who said wash your hands. The medical births, the doctors were doing autopsies in the morning, and then they were delivering babies in the afternoon, and they weren't washing their hands. And Dr. Semmelweis said, "Hey, you need to wash your hands." And then the births started. There was a reduction in the maternal birth rates. So there are a lot of doctors like that. Barry Marshall, who swallowed H. pylori when he said, "This is what's causing it. This is what's causing ulcers." And so Dr. Rappaport is part of that. He has stood up against medical dogma. He's 89 years old this month, and he has really been, that was a huge part of the reason that I wrote the book. But I've been carrying his message, and then ITSAN's been carrying it. But it's just something that when you can free someone through this, when we first started, I just threw up a website because Dr. Rappaport, again, when I met him, he was in his 70s. He didn't know anything about the internet. I just found his article. So I had this woman from Jordan, the country, say, "This is happening to my daughter." And she went through the topical steroid, and I got hundreds of emails from all over the world in '09. And this woman said, "I want to come to the US and wash your feet." It was like, people are so thankful when they find the answer. It gives you hope.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but no one will believe it anyway. But you mentioned it in the book. You are 64 years old. You don't look it at all. But you're also a world record swimmer and a skin champion. And so how do you see skin as more than cosmetic, perhaps as a longevity organ?
Yeah, well, thank you. I feel like your skin is your largest organ, which we say all the time in this cause, that if someone had what we go through with topical steroid addiction, if someone had a heart condition like that, or a liver condition, or a back condition, or a brain condition, your skin is your largest organ. And so I joke, my husband jokes, again, I think I told you this before we started recording, that my husband is 12 years younger than I am. And I don't have any gray hair. I don't dye my hair. He is fully gray, even though he's, again, 12 years younger. And I believe that my skin molted off. Like a lot of my friends, I look way better in my 60s than I did when I was going through topical steroid withdrawal in my 50s. I think it sloughed off all the skin. So, but I do think your skin is a huge indicator of health. I think that it's really important that we know and learn. We've learned now, and I've certainly learned it going through, menopause, being way on the other side of menopause, but having used a short amount of hormone replacement therapy, which was a cream. So bioidentical hormones that you put on your skin, that we need to learn that everything we put on our skin is like eating it. We're learning that now, that there's websites that say this is an endocrine system disruptor, from sunscreens to makeup to, shampoos and all kinds of things. So I think our skin is so just, it's just skin, like you were taught in medical school. Oh, it's safe. You can use topical steroids on your skin. Everything we're putting on our skin is going into our body. And now I don't put anything on my skin that I can't eat. And that is just my standard, my rule. So yeah, we've got to take care of our skin, and drinking water, of course, and being careful what we put on it. And that's why I'm kind of a skin champion that way, but it rhymes. I mean, I'm a swim champion from adult master swimming. And then I want to champion people to take care of their skin and be really careful what they put on it.
Yeah, that's such a good point about skin. With what we eat, we have the FDA that, such as it is. I mean, it's far from perfect, but at least there are some regulations about what can go into food and what can't go into food. There's really nothing at that level about what we apply to our skins. Yet, as you point out, we literally absorb it through our skins just like we do if we were eating it, or in similar fashions, especially, stuff we use, shampoo, deodorants, if we use those, creams, all those things. It's really the Wild West out there for those. I love your book. People have got to get it and read it. You share some wild stories in there from, crab cosplay, boxing gloves, and the least romantic night of your marriage.
Yeah.
Which one best captures the madness of the journey?
I think the least romantic night of the marriage. This was going down the rabbit hole where, I was clearly should have stopped using steroids, but I went to dermatologist, and this one dermatologist diagnosed me with scabies because that's what my skin was just red all over. And she said, let's just treat you for scabies. Well, not that and I write in the book, scabies, are more likely picked up in a prison than at my local swimming pool, which is what I was doing. But the problem when you get treated with scabies is you have to treat your bedfellow. So my poor husband we had to cover ourselves head to toe in permethrin, which is a thick, stinky, like think of Vaseline that has a horrible odor. And we coated ourselves from the bottom of our ears, chin down, all the way down. And we had to boil sheets and, like desanitize the whole house from scabies. And, my husband and I were falling asleep. We're in bed. We're both coated. We're just laying there. And I write, this is like a zombie apocalypse. And we both side-eyed each other. And my husband said, I think we've reached a new low. And we really hadn't. We hadn't at that point because I hadn't even figured out what was causing it.
Well, if we were able to get every dermatologist in the world to get them all together in one room, what would be your one sentence prescription for them or message?
Oh gosh, that would be the ideal thing. I think it would be this. Just open your eyes and see the difference in eczema and topical steroid addiction. And we know that you don't want to harm us. We know that. I mean, I come from 5 generations of doctors, and I love doctors and I love dermatologists. I just want them to open their eyes and see that they're distinctly different. And this is Dr. Rappaport's words and Dr. Fukaya's words and the doctors that are now on board and Dr. Leo's words. They're distinctly different patterns, and take the time to see those and hear us because we're alone and we need doctors to help us through this.
And now a message for parents. So if a doctor prescribes steroids for a baby's rash, what question should they ask before filling that script?
Yes. Does this contain a steroid is one thing. And the reason this book is kind of whistleblowing and a little bit controversial is there's a dermatologist who is giving a CME at a dermatology conference, and he actually instructs his fellow dermatologist to avoid the question, is this a steroid? He says, I tell them it's an anti-inflammatory, all-natural product that works with your immune system. And he says, I don't answer the question that I don't want to answer. And so he's telling other dermatologists to actually mislead them. I don't think that he is the rule, but I think that that's where the medical dogma is. But I would say to parents, is this really an emergency? I mean, so many of the parents that I've talked with over the last 15 years is, gosh, I would so go back to that one little bit of eczema or that one scratch to go back in time, to have a time machine to say, wow, I wish I hadn't used that. But does it really need a steroid? And is it a steroid? And could coconut oil, or could just a good moisturizer, or could, changing the diet, something. But does a child really need, who's not in full development, do they really need a hormone disrupting steroid?
So now you've written the book False Cure, which I again recommend to everybody. You've built the nonprofit ITSAN, and you're still breaking world swim records. So what's the one thing you want your legacy to be in all these areas?
Yeah, I think more than anything, it's that I helped people from suffering to stay out of the ditch of topical steroid addiction and withdrawal. That is the thing that I would want on my tombstone, would just be, please be very careful with these. They're real problem. They can initiate real problems, and just be cautious, because it's a hell that it's really hard to describe. And one of the stats I didn't give is ITSAN did a study of people going through TSW. 47% of people going through TSW had suicidal ideation. And I was one of them. It was just, when your skin is messed up, your appearance, you can't perform, there's really nothing you can do when your entire body is involved and you're itching and you can't sleep. And you just want to, you really want to not be around. It's not like many of us had that active, like, I'm going to do this to kill myself, but it was kind of like, I wish that I weren't alive. And that's real. So if I can stop one person, one family from overdoing topical steroids, that will be a huge legacy.
Well, that's such a great point, and thank you so much, Kelly, for being with us here on this program and sharing your experience. And hopefully, I'd love to get you back on and talk some more about this in the future.
Thank you so much for giving me the ability to reach your audience and amplifying my voice and the endorsement of the book. I'm a huge fan of yours, and you're doing the same thing. And I'm just really, really grateful for you.
Kelly Palace is the author. The book you've got to get, is called False Cure: How a Miracle Cream Fueled a Denied Epidemic and the Movement That Fought Back. Don't miss it. Thanks again, Kelly. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
If you're enjoying this program, please hit that subscribe button, or even better, leave a review. Your support makes it possible for us to create the quality programming that we're continually striving for. Half of all heart attacks strike without warning. Your best early warning? A CT calcium scan. We've made it even better by adding arterial age and liver fat quantification, all from the same scan. Now available nationwide without a doctor's prescription. Use the code Lufkin20 for 20% off. This episode is brought to you by L Nutra, maker of the Prolong fasting mimicking diet. Use the link in the show notes for 20% off.
One of the most common questions I get asked are which blood tests I check for myself on a regular basis. Well, I check up to 50 biomarkers, but the secret is that I'm able to do everything from the convenience of my home, and I collect a sample with this new breakthrough device. So no more trays full of tubes of blood, needles, or even finger sticks. And you don't need to be a doctor to do it. Then I just mail it in for the results. SciFox Health makes it possible. Use the link below to get 20% off.
Can I start? Is it recording?
It's already recording.
Oh, sorry. This is for general information and educational purposes only, and it's not intended to constitute or substitute for medical advice or counseling. The practice of medicine or the provision of healthcare, diagnosis or treatment, or the creation of a physician-patient or clinical relationship. The use of this information is at their own user's risk. If you find this to be on the value, please hit that like button to subscribe to support the work that we do on this channel. And we take your suggestions and advice very seriously, so please let us know what you'd like to see on this channel. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you next time. You should say that.
No, that's good. That's for you to say it. I think that's very good. Do you like it? You want to do it one more time, or is that good? I think that was good.
Yes.
All right.
You need to save the recording.